Marcus Delaney had $9.40 in his account when he saw the woman sitting outside the diner. It was raining, the kind of steady, cold autumn rain that gets into your collar and stays there, and she was sitting on the curb outside Henley's, the small 24-hour place 2 blocks from his apartment, with a cardboard sign that had mostly dissolved in the wet and a coat that wasn't doing much against the temperature. He had been on his way home from a double shift at his data analysis job, tired in the specific way that comes from doing careful work for 10 hours straight, thinking mostly about whether his account would survive until Friday. He stopped anyway. He went inside Henley's and ordered 2 meals, the cheap ones, the only ones he could afford, and brought one outside to her. He sat down on the curb beside her, in the rain, and ate his meal while she ate hers, and they talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. She asked about his job. He asked where she usually stayed. Neither of them treated the conversation as anything except 2 people sharing a meal on a wet evening. He went home. He thought about her for a few minutes before falling asleep, the way you think about small kindnesses that don't ask for anything in return. He did not expect to see her again. The next morning, he walked into his company's headquarters 15 minutes before a scheduled all-staff briefing, and the woman who walked to the front of the boardroom, wearing a tailored navy suit, was the same woman who had been sitting in the rain outside Henley's 12 hours earlier. She was Elena Cross. She owned the company he worked for, and she had spent the last month finding out exactly which of her employees were the kind of people worth trusting with what she was about to build next. Please like this video right now. I'm genuinely asking you. Those likes matter so much for stories like this. Hit the button. Subscribe too. Completely free. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Now let me tell you why Elena Cross was sitting in the rain. Marcus Delaney was 29 years old and had been working as a data analyst at Cross Dynamics for 3 years, in a department that handled enough volume to keep him consistently busy and not enough recognition to ever feel like the work was being noticed by anyone above his direct supervisor. He was good at his job, methodical, careful, the kind of analyst whose reports were trusted without being questioned because his work had earned that trust over time. He was not, however, a person who had ever positioned himself for advancement. He showed up, did excellent work, and went home, and had told himself for 3 years that this was a reasonable way to build a life, even if it wasn't an exciting one. He lived modestly, not desperately, but carefully, the specific, careful living of someone managing student debt and an entry-level salary in an expensive city without much margin for unexpected costs. He had stopped at the diner that night because something about the woman's stillness in the rain had bothered him in a way that walking past would not have resolved. It had not occurred to him, at any point, to wonder who she actually was. That had never been the point of stopping. Elena Cross was 43 and had built Cross Dynamics from a regional data infrastructure firm into a national technology company over 15 years, growing it through the specific combination of technical vision and operational discipline that had made her one of the most respected and most demanding executives in her industry. She had grown over those 15 years, deeply uncertain about something that mattered to her more than the company's growth metrics. She had built an organization with thousands of employees, and she no longer had any reliable way to know which of them actually held the values she wanted her company to represent. Genuine decency, the kind that showed up without an audience, rather than the performed decency that showed up specifically because someone important was watching. She had tried surveys, she had tried culture initiatives, she had tried every conventional method available to a CEO trying to understand the actual character of the people working beneath layers of management she could no longer personally observe. None of it had told her what she actually needed to know, so she had done something unconventional. For 1 month, she had disappeared from her public role entirely, handled through a carefully managed cover story about an extended international trip, and had spent that month living as someone with nothing, observing, in the specific unguarded moments that only happen when people believe nobody important is watching, who in her organization's broader orbit actually behaved with decency when there was nothing in it for them. She had chosen the location outside Henley's deliberately, close enough to several cross-dynamics offices that employees regularly passed by on their way home. In 4 weeks, dozens of employees had walked past her. Most had not noticed her at all. Several had noticed and looked away deliberately. One had stopped, bought 2 meals with money he clearly couldn't easily spare, and sat with her in the rain without performing a single moment of it. She had known, by the 2nd week of her observation, that this was the most important thing the entire experiment was going to produce. She had not expected it to happen with someone who worked 3 management layers beneath her, in a department she had never personally visited. She found that fact more meaningful, not less. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway of the all-staff briefing room, processing the impossible continuity between the woman from the curb and the woman now standing at the front of the room, addressing the entire department leadership. She saw him immediately. She did not single him out in front of everyone. She was too careful, too deliberate in everything she did, to handle a moment like that without consideration for what it would mean for him professionally and personally. She simply continued the briefing, a routine quarterly address about company direction, and let the meeting end normally. Afterward, as people filed out, an assistant approached Marcus directly and asked him to wait. He waited in the hallway for 15 minutes, his mind working through every possible explanation and discarding all of them as insufficient. Elena came out and asked him to walk with her. She did not apologize for the deception. She explained it, directly and without excessive justification, the same way she explained most things, clearly, completely, and without wasted words. She told him about the month, the reason for it, what she had been trying to learn, and why conventional methods had failed to teach her. She told him he was the only person, in 4 weeks of observation, who had stopped. Marcus sat with this for a long moment. He said he hadn't done it to be noticed. She said, "I know. That's exactly why it mattered." She offered him a position 3 days later, a promotion that moved him from his analyst role into a newly created strategic development position, reporting, for the first time, directly into the executive layer of the company. The promotion was not framed as a reward for the curb. It was framed, accurately, as recognition of analytical work he had already been quietly doing well for 3 years, combined now with an opportunity scaled to match the character she had personally witnessed. Marcus accepted. He did not anticipate how quickly that acceptance would generate resentment from people who had spent years positioning themselves for exactly the kind of advancement that had just been handed to someone who had, as far as they understood it, done nothing more than buy a homeless person dinner. Please like this video, I'm asking you. Those likes mean so much for stories like this. Hit the button. Subscribe if you haven't. Free. Drop a comment right now. Where in the world are you watching from? Now the part where the resentment turns dangerous. 2 senior executives, Richard Pell and Donna Kessler, both of whom had been competing for years for visibility at the executive layer Marcus had just unexpectedly entered, decided, within weeks, that his presence represented a problem requiring a solution. They did not move against him directly. People at their level rarely did. Instead, a set of confidential strategic documents, details of an unreleased product roadmap, the kind of information that competitors would pay significantly to access early, appeared to have been leaked externally. The internal investigation, conducted initially through standard IT security protocols before anyone in leadership was directly involved, identified Marcus's access credentials as the technical point of origin for the leak. The evidence, on its surface, was specific and damning. Marcus had access to the relevant systems through his new role. Login records showed activity at times that corresponded to the leak's timeline. An external email address, fabricated, though nobody investigating at the technical level had reason to suspect this yet, appeared in communication logs connected to his credentials. Richard and Donna raised the issue formally with appropriate concern, recommending immediate suspension pending full investigation. Elena heard the allegation in a meeting with both executives present. She listened to the entire presentation without visible reaction. Then she asked a single question that neither Richard nor Donna had prepared for. She asked who else had access to the systems in question during the relevant time frame. Richard said the access logs were specific to Marcus. Elena said she wanted the raw access logs, not the summary, reviewed by an independent security team she would select personally. The independent review took 9 days. What it found was considerably more complicated than the initial internal investigation had suggested. Marcus's credentials had, indeed, shown activity during the leak window, but the deeper forensic analysis identified a credential spoofing technique, a method that allowed someone with sufficient system access to make their activity appear to originate from another employee's login. The technique required a level of system access available only to a small number of senior personnel. Richard Pell's name appeared in that small group. So did Donna Kessler's. The independent investigators traced the actual external communication, the real leak, not the fabricated trail pointing at Marcus, to a personal device registered to Richard Pell, used to communicate with a competitor's business development director over a 6-week period that predated Marcus's promotion entirely. Richard had been leaking information independently for months. When Marcus's sudden advancement had threatened his own positioning, Richard and Donna had seen an opportunity to eliminate a perceived competitive threat, while simultaneously providing a convenient scapegoat for activity that was, in reality, entirely Richard's doing. Elena chose to address the full situation publicly at the company's quarterly shareholders' meeting. Not out of theatrical instinct, but because the leaked information had market implications that shareholders had a legitimate right to understand, and because the false accusation against Marcus deserved a correction with the same visibility as the original allegation. She presented the independent investigation's findings directly. She named Richard Pell and Donna Kessler specifically, with the documentation to support every claim, in front of the board, senior leadership, and the assembled shareholders. She stated clearly that Marcus Delaney had been wrongly accused, that the actual breach originated with 2 executives who had attempted to use a fabricated trail to eliminate a colleague they viewed as a threat to their own advancement, and that both executives' employment with Cross Dynamics had been terminated effective immediately, with the relevant findings referred to legal counsel for further action regarding the unauthorized disclosure itself. The room was silent through the entire presentation. Marcus, watching from the back of the room where Elena had asked him to be present, understood for the first time the specific scale of what she had been willing to do to correct what had been done to him. She had not handled it quietly, through internal channels, in a way that protected the company's reputation at the cost of Marcus's vindication. She had handled it publicly, completely, in a way that made his innocence as visible as the original accusation had been. What followed over the next 2 years was the kind of growth that happens when someone genuinely talented is finally given resources that match their ability. Marcus led the development of a new strategic analytics division, built on the specific intersection of his technical skill and the broader vision Elena had been trying to find someone to execute for years. The division became, within 18 months, the most profitable new business unit Cross Dynamics had launched in over a decade. He worked alongside Elena directly through most of that development. Long days, genuine collaboration, the specific working partnership that develops between 2 people who respect each other's competence completely and have stopped needing to perform anything for each other. What grew between them, alongside the work, developed with the same unforced honesty that had defined their first conversation outside Henley's. Neither of them rushed it. They married 3 years after the rain-soaked diner curb, in a small ceremony that included almost none of the corporate world either of them moved through professionally, and almost all of the people who had genuinely mattered to each of them before any of this began. Together, they established the Henley Foundation, named deliberately for the diner, funding shelters and job training centers across the cities where Cross Dynamics operated. Elena said at the foundation's launch that the foundation existed because a stranger had once shared a meal with her without knowing who she was or what it would cost him, and that the entire purpose of the foundation was to make sure more moments like that one had the chance to happen, not because anyone was watching, but because that was simply who certain people were when nobody was. Marcus, standing beside her, said the foundation's actual founder wasn't either of them. It was $9.40 and a decision to stop in the rain. Marcus Delaney had $9.40 and spent half of it on a stranger because something about her stillness in the rain felt more important than his own caution. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea what it would cost him. The resentment, the false accusation, the specific danger of being suddenly visible in a world that had previously left him alone. He also had no idea what it would give him. Here is the question I want to leave you with. Marcus stopped without knowing anything about who Elena actually was. He would have stopped for anyone. Does that make his kindness more meaningful because it asked for nothing and expected nothing in return? Or does the fact that it happened to change his entire life take something away from the purity of the original act, turning a quiet kindness into a story about reward rather than about decency for its own sake? Drop your answer in the comments. I want the real one. And please tell me where you're watching from. Please like this video. Please, genuinely. Those likes are what helps stories like this reach the people who need them. Hit the button. Subscribe if you haven't. It's free. Share this with someone today. See you in the next one.